So in these images, what we're going to focus on are some views that are a little more difficult and that really push the last step, which was getting that clear sense of perspective reading as well as you can early on. Our last video showed more how to play around with the tilts and put an emphasis on that sense of perspective, but still keep the jaw and the emotion clear. So on this one, I want to start out by looking at the back of the skull. In this image, we have 3/4 back. So we did talk about that as one of our standard views. So I could start with the same, a ball, an egg, and then my tilt. The other thing you could do is, if you remember back to the beginning of the gesture lecture for heads, that we said, the head is more of an egg. And if you take it in that sense and look at what's here, what I can start to notice if I represent the head more of it as an egg is that we have the back, and that there is this natural inclination for our head to sit at a slight diagonal, right? So I'm noticing that on this model. And the result of that is that your profile is, or that the front of the face would be at a slight angle, right? So just to give you some context, here would be the attachment for the jaw or the TMJ going that way. So that's all long way of saying, I think this is more tilted. So I'm going to use that line. But sometimes those are the mental gymnastics I have to do to just land on one diagonal that is not, stiff. So tilt, then neck tilts this way. If you need help remembering this, I always put my neck at a diagonal because that's what the spine is doing. This cervical section of the spine is shoving the neck forward. Even if you think you see the outline of the neck as something static, inside it does have that three-dimensional positioning to it. So we'd have that form going this way. Then shoulders, maybe that for now. So that's step 2, tilts. Now let's add our shape for the jaw, front, 3/4 chin, bring that back up. And I know it's been a while, but remember my trick here is to bring this corner of the chin, instead of doing the cross, instead of doing step 3, I'm going to bring this up. So this would be the mandible, and then inside. And then kind of aim this line to hit near that area around the ear. And then you could follow through. Sometimes I like to draw through just to believe that I can challenge myself to see that through. In this view, I should say I like to show the base of the skull as maybe like a substitute or a supplement for the cross of the brow, right? So instead of doing that brow across the front, because the back of your head is really boxy and square and broader, using this line to across, right where you see the neck connect, or in this model, slightly above the hairline. Or you could start to use something like that as something to give some context, like the brow would in the front or the cross would in the front. So what's my brow? Well, I see brow here, ear a little lower. So I'm going to go with slightly above. So that'd be my ellipse. Let's also include our neck. So here's my neck. I think for the back views especially, it's really important to do as many overlaps as you can. So like having our neck here always helps with this view in terms of getting the big stuff to read. And I'm still trying to, just like that little arrow, I'm trying to make this go forward. And then later we would put like another overlap for the shoulder. What you could put in here, again, remember I said every transition area always looks like a triangle. This could be the transition of skin that we've talked about from the skin and muscle, from the canopy of the jaw into the neck. I like to use something like this. It just helps push or emphasize that feeling of the overlapping of forms, like a little mini landscape. Sometimes if I see the top two, it's just a notational moment where I'm thinking about reminding myself that's the top. Right? So I've set up my forms. This is thinking about these surface lines, right? How the head connects to the neck and then into the back or rib cage. Let's take a look at this one. It's another kind of difficult example, something that would really challenge our initial process. What's challenging about using these 4 steps early on too could also just be that you've really limited your means, but you're not giving yourself contour of the face, hair, overlaps of ears and skin folds and muscles. And so in something that's more gestural or notational, you're giving yourself less to work with to say a broad range of information. So it can take some getting used to for these, but I think the more that you do them, the more you'll become comfortable and kind of sync up with how this resonates as a language for your style of drawing. In this one, what might be useful is, sometimes I like to do my tilt, which would be like that for the head. But then if I really think that this is something that's participating in space in a way that I need to be aware of, I'll like maybe include little perspective arrows, just to help my memory or brain connect with the idea of that forward back lean to the head. And then neck, still doing this, that's pretty reliable. Shoulders, probably going this way. And that, I could do the same thing. So you see me use these arrows quite often, like, look there, I think I'm addicted to them. But they are always all over the place in my drawing, because it's thinking, right? It's visual thinking for me. So now I could put my jaw or face, chin, but here I'm really gonna subtract. I don't want a lot of distance there. That probably could even be a little too much. Then we'll bring the jaw this way. So now that's my 3/4 almost profile face, but tilted up and away. I need the neck to help with the context. So pinch in the back, stretch in the front. And then if I had the extra lines to spare, I would start to show that there's not just, what we're talking about with the neck so far has been that a lot of like side to side pinch. Oh, the neck is, pinched on the back because they're looking up, or it's pinched in the front because they're looking down. But pinch and stretch also takes place inside the form. So one way we could communicate this later is that the head, let's say this is the head for now, is pinching against the shoulder is because the pinches are taking place inside just as much as they're creating different configurations on the contour. So that is something I'm thinking about here, but resisting, in terms of drawing. Doesn't have a place yet in the drawing so much. And then brow. So brow is really low. So my T would probably be down here. Right, and I look at the whole of the head, maybe even lower. So I always find that when I don't take this time, there's a weird natural, I see it a lot with students too, where instead of compressing the space for foreshortening, things get longer. Like noses get longer, things get stretched out and distorted, instead of the spaces being abbreviated or truncated. So this is, I think, really challenging, the stuff that you're trying to do or think about here and summarize with these brief lines. But it's going to pay off as we start to advance through the drawing, because you never have to worry about it again. But once it's done, and you just move on to the fun stuff. So brow to ear. So that means this is a pretty big three-dimensional tilt. So what does that mean? It means that I think I'm seeing the entire perspective of the head at this type of 3D angle. So this means the top, this means the side, right? This means the chin. So that later I won't have to worry about coming in and redeciphering all of that. I can just work within the parameters I set up to build features. So that's the top, our lean, ideas about the compression. How would we deal with shoulders here? Might be good just to leave it as is. You could do that. But let's say you want to kind of indicate for a drop, like this shoulder is low, other shoulder is high. You could start to think about maybe a plane. In a view like this, if you feel concerned about that orientation of the perspectives. So what I'm thinking about here would be a plane that would communicate the lean of the shoulders like that. You could relate that to kind of a principle of anatomy that would be the shoulder girdle, or like the structure of the shoulder is that perspective block that sits over the rib cage. But definitely a more complicated pose or read here. But that's where I'd probably stop, at risk of wanting to do more. Remember, whenever you feel that urge to, I gotta get that ear in though, probably a good time to move on. Let's do a real dramatic look at the sky. So here's the head, tilt this way, neck. So my temptation would be to do that, right? But I'm gonna try to keep just the tilts. So I think the neck would be doing this, shoulder this, here's my jaw. So this is 3/4, despite the fact that it's being raised. You can see my chin here. I don't think it's gonna take too much away from the head, but it's definitely not that 2/3, 1/3 anymore. Brow, really high up here. Sometimes when I'm doing that line in poses like this, I'll try to look at the difference in space. So how close is it? So that would be there, ears down here. So connect those or line those up with your ellipse. So what does that mean? That means that I'm suggesting to the viewer that you're seeing the head from this angle. So this is under, eyes up there. So what am I going to do? Whenever I have this in this kind of extreme angle, just take it and bring it down here. So you have your ellipse there. Put that down here now. You get that 2 for 1, or you get this one for free. Because now you're starting to suggest that that would be the underplane of the jaw, or that jaw's canopy area. So that's our underplane. And then now we could deal with our neck. So maybe my neck here is definitely stretched, and then the back of the head pinched. So that's my kind of trying to keep that economy or that simple language as clear as I can. C always means pinch or active muscle for me. S always means stretch or a passive muscle. It might be too much too soon, but the reason that I use that is because I always think of drawing not just as the thing that I'm making. It's not just a head, it's also the head's relationship to the negative space. So when I'm making a drawing, I'm thinking not just about what I'm making, but the design that it leaves and the impact it has on the entire design of the shape around it. Anytime you make a line, right, you're always demarcating the thing from the space. So drawing has to be, or can be, if you think that's interesting or fun, the balance and the compromise of those two. The neck, and then let's put that perspective connection for, just think about the neck into the rib cage. And then kind of we'd fill in this area more so with anatomy. That would be pretty good for that one. I think what really helps sell it in this one for me is this plane. Let's take a look at this one. This is kind of profile, but also a little bit back view. There's my head. What I think is happening in this, so leaning that way, neck this way, shoulders that way, jaw, profile, slight 3/4 brow. This part's not too bad, right? I definitely think it's leaning away, but it's not as extreme as the last one. So I'm favoring this part. That means I could just take this and introduce it down here. This is the mandible, right back up to the remus and the ear. Underplane. What's our neck doing? So here's one thing where we get what we just talked about with the back, but in this slight profile, I might also use that, because we didn't use it as much here, the brow or that cross. Maybe we put it here. Usually this will line up with the bottom of your nose. So if you just want some parameters as to where you'd find that back plane for the base of the skull. Where did I put it? Just kind of look for that relationship. It doesn't always work, but it'll get you in the area. And then I like this line or that angle because it starts to define the back plane of the skull. Notice that it's parallel to this though, right? That any lines here that are describing depth, I'm keeping parallel. This is too much too soon for sure, but one thing that my process tries to do, and its emphasis on perspective, is we're not going to be drawing the head as boxes, but it doesn't help, or it doesn't hurt, to consider it primarily from the standpoint of maintaining space and proportion in your perspective, right? That when you start to find these planes, and when we come across the planes by process of steps and elimination, all the information that ends up on them has to remain parallel. Like the most common way, frequent way that I see heads start to get a little distorted is for these lines to go different directions, or features that are on those planes go different directions. Here's your C curve, S curve for the neck, and then high to low because we're ultimately seeing the front. This one is so challenging, I don't really even want to draw it, but I will. Yes! So this is one where we would absolutely need overlaps. So we're at a bit of a disadvantage again. I do need to have overlapping forms to make something feel like it's extremely foreshortened. This is a really common question with figure gesture too. Well, how do I do dynamic poses? How do I do perspective and foreshortening? Very carefully, or you don't, right? Because it's not yet ready for it. That's just not the stage. So here, let's do as much as we can. This is my head. I begrudgingly am thinking of a tilt that's this way, but I'm going to add my perspective arrows, right? So that would be even more extreme. So that my 2-dimensional tilt I can think of as 3-dimensional. Hopefully that reads. That the head is leaning away. That tilt is a 3D tilt and not a straight up and down tilt. Right? That stage is the same. Instead of doing the jaw, I'm going to do that straight at the back of the skull. Right? So you could use that there, and that would be kind of indicating for this area. And then maybe for this one, we could use that to the bottom of the ear to help find our perspective. So we could do Start to think of this. But this is like that rare edge case scenario where it strains some of the steps because it just gets so weird in terms of its configuration or the forms of it. Every approach, every gesture, so we're talking about every shape has its own specialty. Every gesture has its own specialty as well. Sometimes in a pose like this, it might just be good you can just focus on the body as this distorted combination of abstract shapes when it becomes that foreshortened. But where I think we could start to make some progress would be bringing that neck in. So here would be my stretch. So the neck is stretching in this case, and then I'm going to build in my volume. So this would be the perspective that we've been looking at with the neck, where we try to show that offset relationship. Maybe we can flare the cylinder a little bit so we start to get that forced feeling of perspective. We talked about that head being a little bit square in the back. Sometimes just shaving the back of your skull down with some straights can help that feel like it's dipping down or forward some. And then tilt to the shoulder line. Right now it could be this. This is that 7th cervical vertebrae I'm seeing on the neck. Things that would really help this later, or would help me develop this viewpoint later, would be details, like from the back getting the ear or the overlap of muscles. Stuff I don't really want to do now because it takes it outside of the basic emphasis of this 4-step approach. Here, so this would be the reverse of that really extreme from the front. Tilt, 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 head, jaw, 3/4, wrap your shape down, stretch for the neck, barely any neck in the front, just a little pinch. Offset angle of perspective, brow, really low. So now that'd be my cross. Ear pretty high, so that means we're seeing this perspective. Double check your major axes as being halfway. I'm trying to show, what am I trying to show? This angle, and that's it. So that would be ready to build on. So that one, what happened is this area got a little bit smaller, and then we just opened up this ellipse between the brow to the ear. Oh, what happens now? No neck. Still have to draw it to imagine it. Shoulders. Here's the jaw. So I would probably subtract some jaw for this one. I think I'm seeing the chin hitting right at the sternum or the pit of the neck. So that's there. Brow is here. Ear is up here. If we were to see the neck, it would probably be hidden in here. But we could get more from this view in terms of the foreshortening if we start to pull that shape out a little bit. Here's my center line, but it's not too instructive right now. And that would be it. The poses that we've gone through here definitely represent the extreme end of this as the positioning of the head, neck, and shoulder. And I think for the most part, you can get by with this process pretty consistently through each one. That'll be clearer the more that we develop it later, so that you have the kind of the broad lay of the land, so to speak, with what we're doing here. Just keep in mind, no workflow will ever be the magic bullet that fixes every single pose. Some of the ones that we did here, if you need to cheat a little bit or introduce some of your own steps or push an overlap, it's not the end of the world. Our approach is really just trying to direct your attention to something that is set up, an initiation to the drawing, thinking of big ideas and not getting bogged down in detail. So for each one of these, we've definitely kept that consistent. And now it's time to start to take these and build them up.